I want to welcome everybody to the workshop today, where we're going to talk about project reporting and hopefully get a lot of it done for you, if we can. Project reporting in MyClimateWise for 2010, for all the projects that you did in 2010. My name is Matt Gibbs. I work with ClimateWise, which is a part of utilities at the City of Fort Collins. And I'm going to be leading at least the workshop portion of it here, but really all the staff, ClimateWise staff that's here can help you answer questions, especially when we get into the working part of the session. A lot of folks here have probably already reported in MyClimateWise at least once. In fact, it'd be a good idea to get a showing of hands. How many people have never reported in MyClimateWise before, or is this your first year? Okay, good. That's a good mix. So we're about 50-50, and that means that there's other folks in here to lean on too and ask questions of. So let's get started. MyClimateWise, most of you should have already seen this because you've attended orientation, but we're just going to do a very brief overview, and then we're going to log in and do a demonstration of that. And then I have some tools for you guys to take home that I want to mention. MyClimateWise, you may have already seen this, has three main purposes. The first one is to manage your own business contacts, who has access to the reporting data and so forth, your phone numbers, email address, things like that. The second is to monitor where you are in terms of your reporting progress and what steps you may have to plan for over the coming year. And the third one is why we're really here. That's the reporting piece up here. We're gonna put in all the projects that you reported today, and we're gonna talk about examples and give you an idea and a framework to launch from. And that's where we want to spend our time. Let's go to MyClimateWise and actually log in. We'll see the screen that we're going to be working with, and it's going to make a lot more sense when we go through examples of projects in terms of what data it is that you're going to need to enter. So when you get to this screen, there's a link right in the middle of the screen that says access MyClimateWise here. You're going to click on that button, and it's going to take you to another link that gets you behind the city firewall, and you can log in. And you should already have an account. As a partner, when you sign up, we send you login information. It's going to be your email, and if you haven't reset your password, it's going to be climate, all lowercase, and the number 1. So when you log in, it's going to show your business's name, your organization's name, and you're going to see a screen that looks just like this. You're going to have all these boxes and requirements, and they fall into different categories depending on what level you're shooting for this year. But let's just take a quick look at what we can do here. Basically, two things happen on this screen. We upload documentation or descriptions, and then we submit them. And our focus today is going to be on number 2 and to a certain extent number 8. But number 2 predominantly. So let's open up number 2. And this is where you're going to be entering your data on your screen today. So when I talk about examples, we're going to be toggling back and forth between the examples that I present and what it's going to look like on the screen and how it's going to roll out. So in the top of the screen, when you click on number 2, it's to report and submit your projects annually. You get a brief overview. That's the executive summary of what we're doing today. And then you're going to have a number of tabs that are near the bottom of the page that represent 4 different areas that we report in. Well, 5, but 4 predominantly. Energy, water, solid waste, transportation, and then we have an other form that's sort of this ambiguous category where if you don't know where it goes and we don't know where it goes, that's where it goes in the other form. So let's just take a look at, click on any one of those tabs. We'll even preempt this and look at the energy tab. Same instructions on every page. You never have to back up to see what's going on. And then these are all the dialog boxes you're going to fill in. And I'm going to give you examples that put some real numbers and some real data into what needs to go into this particular screen. Okay? And then if we back up 1, you can, after you submit any project, even if you just type in a project name and you submit it, we have an overview screen that allows you to see. It's just basically a summary. It's a chapter summary of everything that you've entered. And in this particular one for the City of Fort Collins, they've entered a transportation project that they had completed. These are the tools I was mentioning. I just leave this here as a placeholder. because I know some people, if you may get done with your reporting early, you may leave when you're done. That's totally up to you. You all have your own schedules. But just so you know that there are a number of tools, this PowerPoint and these tools have already been uploaded to the website, so you can download this PowerPoint and check out any of the data that we have in here and any of the tools so that you have reference materials for later. All right, this is the meat and potatoes. This is the project reporting. So briefly, I'm going to go over the reasons and importance of reporting, but mostly we're going to stick to why the project reporting examples. We're going to have one example for each area: energy, water, waste, and transportation. Why report project data? Well, it's kind of integral. It's essential. It's the foundation of the ClimateWise program. Without it, we really wouldn't be able to gauge what sort of success our partners are having. And the other piece of this is that it's a very essential part of the actual Fort Collins Climate Action Plan, and they're actually able to determine the effect that ClimateWise and their partners have with the reductions through their projects that they have every year in terms of their own environmental impact. And that weighs in terms of the reporting that's done on an annual basis with the Climate Action Plan. That's sort of the macro level picture. But what we're interested in today is really annual report of projects. Mentioned that already a couple times. That's why we're all here. So they happen annually. You may do an energy lighting retrofit, but you also may recycle on an annual basis. It's just our way of knowing what our partners are doing, and for you guys to really track and see what you've done historically over time. So it gives you the ability to review and document your progress. And then this will be the first of 3 reminders. Since it's done annually, we have to have a deadline for reporting. And our reporting deadline this year is March 1. Okay? We'll see it again. There may be a question here. What do I report? What actually qualifies as a project? Well, projects are things that you do within your organization that help to increase efficiency. Maybe you have improved conservation efforts. But in the end, what they do is they reduce an environmental impact of whatever your operation is. Okay? And we really stress be creative. Not to make things up, but to be creative and think hard about what you actually do. You may already have a recycling program in place where you work, but it has an environmental impact on an annual basis. And that's actually a project. So it may be obvious to you to do, but it has an environmental impact that you can report as a project annually. Okay? Also, the data that you want to report may or may not be easily available to you, or it might not be easily measured. Lean on us for that help. And part of that help is going to be some of the simple equations and things that we look at today. They're going to help you calculate what the environmental impact of your project is. And then lastly, your project should be located within the City of Fort Collins growth management area. If the benefits of the project or any other aspect of the project lie outside of the GMA, there may be a question that you have about that. Let us know and we can help figure out how to parse that project out and assign ownership to you. And then there's also what projects actually qualify. So I did this. A recycling program, does it actually qualify? Why? How? How do I know? Well, there's 2 ways, and the first is that you have some sort of, it was professionally implemented, like a lighting retrofit or maybe an HVAC conversion, something that was done that you had a contractor work on, or maybe you submitted an application to the city for a rebate or an incentive. These would be ones that were professionally implemented, and you already have the data in your hands. It's just an input measure at this point. And you just need to add whatever those numbers are into My ClimateWise. And then there's the other kind of project that qualifies, and that's self-implemented. So this could be any sort of waste reduction measures that you take. It could also be unscrewing light bulbs and putting in new CFLs, as simple as that. But you did it on your own. The data's available. You just need a little helping hand to carry out a simple calculation. And then self-implemented projects could be complicated, or you may not know what the climate benefit is of that, or the environmental benefit of that is, and that's when you would want to ask for our help. So let's jump into what an energy project example would be. The first thing you want to ask yourself, and I want to stress this, is what data is required. These are really kind of lining your ducks up in a row so that when you get to MyClimateWise, it's a very simple procedure. You're just plugging in numbers, a little description, you send it to us, and you're done. So there's the first requirement would be if you have some documentation from a contractor or from a rebate application or incentive that you can get back from Fort Collins Utilities or Xcel or whoever you may be using for gas or other utility services. You're going to have all that data for you right there. And you're going to see that when we go back into MyClimateWise, what you need is you probably already have in your hands. If you have number one, you're feeling real good because there's not a lot of work you have to do. But if you don't have this documentation, then you need to do 2, 3, and 4, which is basically this. What happened before you made a change? What did you put in and how is it working after you made a change? And then give us some details that have to do with the operational characteristics, like our office is open, we have working hours that total 2,000 hours a year. Or, we implemented the lighting retrofit in the middle of the year. In June is when it was installed, when it was completed. Those are just details that would help you figure it out. So we have a project name. We're going to call it lighting retrofit. And basically, we replaced fluorescent lighting with some higher efficiency fluorescent lights. So we know what the old is. We had 24 4-lamp T12s. And we know what the new is, 24 4-lamp T8s. And we know that we operate 2,000 hours a year. This is pretty much all the information that we need to make sure that this project is inputted, submitted, and completed for reporting. Now, the calculation piece, you can take a step further, and it's a pretty simple math problem. You know what happened before, right? You had 24 4-lamp T12s, and you know how much they use. Well, you may not in this case, but you can talk to us. 148 watts times your operating hours minus what you the more efficient bulbs that you've now put into those same ballasts. Gives you an output of 4,608,000 watt hours, which we don't really see very often. We're not used to our electric bill stating kilowatt hours. So if we change the units, it's 4,600 kilowatt hours that you save from that lighting retrofit. And that's really all the information that we need to know that you've completed the reporting properly. Could we look at the energy form and show how this may look in it? So in MyClimateWise, we already took a look at what the energy form looks like. And everything we just talked about in the project description is what we need to enter here. So we enter the project name, lighting retrofit, the details. Replaced 24 4-lamp T12s with 24 T8s. We operate 2,000 hours a year. And then there's a couple other buttons to click. Can ClimateWise share this information. That's obviously up to you. The projected savings, a lot of times you're going to have this number right away if you got any sort of bid from a contractor. If you don't know this number, you know what? We can pretty much figure it out from the kilowatt hours that you've saved and just a basic rate for electricity. And then I guarantee you're all going to know what the installed cost is, so that's usually not something that we need to worry too much about, but you'll have that detail. And then what'd you reduce in terms of electrical consumption? I think we said 4,608 kilowatt hours. And if it was a natural gas project, you would enter that data there. And then maybe it was a renewable energy purchase, or if you receive rebates or incentives from the city of Fort Collins, it's good to know that as well. For our purposes, just to track, make sure people are taking advantage of rebates that are available to them. And then they submit it. You submit it. And when you scroll down and click on Overview, you'll see that your project's been submitted. Pretty basic stuff. And let's say this is the only project you had for the year. That's great. You entered all the data we need. You can actually click, there's a little green plus sign, Submit for review. That sends us an email, lets us know that you want us to look it over, double check it. And when we do that, you'll find that there's a green check mark that shows up next to your number 2 out on that main page when you log in. So that little plus sign, the little plus button, will change to a check mark like all the other buttons are on this particular page. One other thing for you all to take away from this particular energy example is Energy projects, 98% of them, are one time, right? They're only going to happen once. You can really only claim the benefit once. So you only need to report it once. We'll carry the benefits forward for you going for whatever we deem as the lifespan of the equipment in that project. But if it's a gadget change and it doesn't require any sort of behavior change, it's really only going to be entered once. In this case, a lot of the electric or electricity-based, energy-based projects that you do are going to be gadget-oriented. They're going to be changing some sort of equipment. It really doesn't have to do with behavior. So you'll only have to enter it once. Okay? If there is one that's a behavior modification, maybe you have a turn off the lights campaign and everyone needs to flip off the light, that one would be behavior-based, and you would tell us about that, report in the same way. However, you would need to report that one every year because it may change every year. You may have a different number of employees. You may go to a new facility. You may upgrade your light switches and you don't need to flip them off anymore. They're all in motion or timers. So keep that in mind as we go through, and I'll mention that for every area that we talk about, energy, water, waste, transportation. I'll mention, if you need to report this every year. Predominantly energy ones you report once, okay? Okay, so let's move forward. Let's look at water projects. Data required. This is the important piece. Get your ducks lined up before you even start reporting. Do you have any documentation on the savings from a contractor or anyone that was helping you out? Did you do some pre-calculations? If not, then you need to do 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you're going to see the pattern repeated throughout every form. What happened before you made a change, what happened after the change. And then tell me about what you did. How many users do you have in the building? So, you have 40 employees. Basically, if it was a toilet replacement, we're counting how many flushes are there going to be in a day. And the type of environment. Is this an office, a home office? It could be a variety of things. So let's go through another example, a toilet replacement. This is all very similar to the light bulb replacement. We replaced 2 5-gallon per flush toilets with 1.6 gallon per flush models. And the toilets are in an office used by 20 employees. Okay, that's pretty good. If you give us that amount of detail, we're going to know how to fill in any other questions that we may have. And if we have them, obviously, we'll come back to you. But it's the same equation that we looked at previously. In this case, we combine the toilets together, so we know that previously it was 10 gallons a flush. If you flushed them at the same time, you got 20 full-time employees. We're going to average 4 uses. We'll fill in that data for you. And you operate 260 days a year as average operation for any business. And then we subtract off what the change was, the change that you made. And in this case, we come up with the gallons saved. Now, if you didn't do this equation at the very end, you can, like Wendy said, you can call us. We can help you get details. We can help talk you through some details, ask questions. But the other point is, I guess, to take away is that if you gave us just these details at the top and submitted it to us, we could probably come pretty close to that number. Okay, because if you talk to us, we're going to give you a similar estimate. So let us know if you have questions, but we're also going to double check it, and we'll come back to you if you don't have any up front. The question was, good question, the question was, is there any place to attach documents when you're reporting your projects? Or is it all self-reported? And the answer is, it's all self-reported. We don't have any place to attach documents. If you want to send us an email with an attachment of a document, you can certainly do that. But the thing is, one of the reasons that we have the Brendel Group as part of our team, they're our third-party fact checkers. They're going to look at all the details on the back side, and if there's any numbers that look funny, they're going to follow up. We don't ask it. We feel like it might be a little too onerous if everybody had to upload a documentation of what they purchased and what they disposed of and how that change was made. So we trust you all to just self-report, honestly. Okay, solid waste projects. Data required. Like I said, you can see the pattern. If you have a documentation of what you recycled over the year, you can get that from your waste hauler. You just call them up, ask for a report. You can get that, and it's going to make your reporting a lot easier. Or maybe you self-haul to Rivendell or something. If you don't have number 1, you need to do 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7. So what'd you do prior to the change? What'd you do after the change? What material did you recycle? Give me the size of the container, frequency of the pickup, and the service provider or hauler. That way we can follow up if we need to. We name our project Aluminum and Glass Recycling. So a lot of times our recycling habits change, and so I feel like this is a pretty good representative example of what folks are doing. So in this example, a partner implemented a recycling program for aluminum and glass that was previously landfilled, and they collect each in separate 65-gallon containers that is picked up bi-weekly. It's great detail. That's exactly what we need. I'm going to throw a little curveball in here because it's fun for me. This is the calculation on aluminum. We know that 65 gallons went out the door every other week, which is 26 weeks a year. And that's a straight calculation of how many gallons of aluminum recycled. You'll see when we go into the recycling form, which is a little bit different than energy and water, that we can actually select the types of materials that we're recycling. But also we're recycling glass. And let's say, we just don't recycle 65 gallons of glass every 2 weeks, but we think it's about 3/4 full from our own observations. So we take the same calculation, we take what the size of the container is, how many weeks a year that it's being hauled, and then we take a fraction of that total container size, and we come up with 1,268 gallons of recycled glass. Okay, on MyClimateWise. So if you guys want to follow along with me and you go into your MyClimateWise and you click on the Solid Waste tab, you'll see that there's a number of different options in terms of pull-down menus and radio buttons to click here. So I wanted to go through it, hopefully make it easier for you when you're reporting. Again, same as before, project name. The details of the project can ClimateWise share those details publicly. The annual project savings. In the case of recycling, there's probably not going to be any dollar savings unless you're recycling certain metals or maybe some sort of cable. But there'll be a cost to the service for sure. And then the disposal method. So there's a variety of different avenues that we can dispose of waste. Recycling's one of them. Reduction's another, and reuse is another. And then the material that's associated with this particular project. This one could be either aluminum or glass. You'd have to enter 2 projects for this particular one. But a lot of folks do single stream recycling, and this is sort of the catch-all right here. You can tell us the quantity that you single stream recycled, and any notes about the material that you want to share with us. And then even further down we have some quantities that you can fill in, and that's going to be, if you get your data, it could be in gallons, it could be in yards, it could be in tons. The question was, is this data based over an annual period? And that's yes, if you've had recycling in place for the entire year. And then give us the name of the hauler if you know it. It's always helpful. It's a good question. So the question was, how do we get credit for using a hauler that does everything by bicycle? Well, one, tell us who that hauler is. In this case, you mentioned it was a bicycling service. And just tell us what that is. In terms of taking credit, we would have to figure out how that credit worked based upon how many pickups you had, and we know who that hauler is and his particular mode of transportation, and we would back those calculations up. That's the answer there.
But when you do that,
so yeah, we'll have a breakdown per partner in terms of their projects and their savings, and we can certainly supply that to you. Solid waste is a little bit different than energy and water in terms of how you consider it for reporting. I mentioned that energy and water projects are a lot of times are gadget based, right? So they're only going to be one time. Solid waste hauling, or recycling in this case, happens annually. The rates can change. What you actually allow to be recycled that comes out of your waste stream could change. And so this is data that 90% of the time is reported annually. Now there may be a one-time report that you do for solid waste. You may do an equipment replacement, computer replacement, or maybe you replace all the furniture. So maybe your computer equipment is salvaged, and that's a recycling project, a one-time recycling project, but maybe you donate your office equipment to another local organization that's going to use it. So in that case, you would select reuse, and it would just be a one-time report. Okay? So transportation projects, like I said, there's a pattern. What did you do before? What are you doing after? Give us the details, the mode, the mileage, the fuel type, and the vehicle type. If you can give us all of those, what happened before and after, we're going to be able to figure out the environmental benefit associated with that. So in this example, we're going to have a project name, Reduction in Vehicle Miles Traveled by Bike Fleet. So let's say you decide that you want to supplement your regular vehicular fleet with a bicycle fleet. And the project, you ask all of your employees to bike to clients that are within 2.5 miles of your business. Obviously, there's probably some conditions associated with that, but you've already figured out that over that year, you saved 3,100 miles, vehicle miles, because of the fleet biking. And just for fun, you like to give us lots of data, which we always want. We always want more detail than you probably think we need. And you add in that our fleet runs on gas only, and it has 4 sedans and 3 compact cars. Well, you already figured out what the environmental impact is pretty much for us. You save 3,100 vehicle miles traveled for the year over the previous year because of this project. Now, when you go into MyClimateWise and you report this, you have a number of different options. So if you could actually go into that, if you want to go into that right now, we don't need to pull it up on the screen because it looks very similar to all the other screens that we've looked at. But there's a couple radio buttons in there, and it's going to say, well, did you use mode as your, would you consider that your mode of change is what your project really embodied? Or was the mileage really what your project embodied? You can see how in this particular example, it covers a lot of different areas. Yeah, you changed your mode, you decreased your mileage, and you actually, your fuel type that you know runs on gas, you purchase less fuel, at least for that particular subset of commuting. Whatever makes sense for your organization, whatever means the most for your own reporting, I want you to check that radio button. And there's always questions on this, so we'll definitely, when we're going through and reporting, we can talk in more detail. But the important thing is, when you're reporting, to consider that you can always look back in time, historically, and actually measure what you've done and what you've changed. And what is important to you today may not be have the same relevance or importance 3 years from now when you look back on the same project. You may be more interested that you have less sedans now than just changing a mode between bike and vehicles. I want to remind you guys that there are some workshop tools that you can take home. We're going to leave this screen up here, so if you need to write them down, you can do that. Also, you can go to MyClimateWise. All of this is there in the PowerPoint. Okay, the question was, can you explain the difference between consumptive and non-consumptive water use? When you go into MyClimateWise, there are options in terms of reporting how many gallons you reduced, sort of what category it fits into. And it may fit into consumptive water use, which is going to be any sort of domestic water use, toilets, faucets, showers, hoses that you use within your business for cleaning, things like that, okay? Non-consumptive water use is processed water. So it may be used in a cooling tower or to cool equipment if you have a manufacturing business. You're not necessarily purchasing the water to have it, it doesn't enter the waste stream. Again, it's actually being reused, but you have to purchase it. Okay, and then there's actually one other water section in there, and it's irrigation. So we actually break out irrigation as something separate from consumptive and non-consumptive water use. If a server was moved from inside Fort Collins to outside of Fort Collins, can I take credit for it? In this case, the chances are, yes, you can take some credit for it. However, we need some detail about the energy consumption of the server before it was moved, and then the energy consumption of the server now that it has been moved. And as long as you have details to provide for us, provide to us, we can work to figure out what percentage can actually be claimed by your organization as a project. March 1 is when all the project reporting is due, okay? And then also we're gonna have a workshop survey, so you're gonna see an email probably from Deb. And it'd be great to have your feedback. It's always good to improve workshops in between when the next workshop is. All right, thanks.